which I do have the key negotiator in the talks right now over overhauling financial regulation here in the United States, Senate Banking Committee Chairman Christopher Dodd, interrupting his day to talk with us about the very latest. Mr. Chairman, thank you, first of all, for the time.
Thank you, Peter.
Do you have a deal yet? You've been talking about being close. Are you there yet?
No, we're not there, but I'm optimistic we can get there in the coming days. This is a huge set of issues. They're complex. Someone said the other day it's more important we get it right than get it right away. And I'm anxious to get it right away, but I'm more importantly getting it right. And so there's a lot of conversation. I'll be meeting later today with my Democratic members of the Banking Committee to brief them as to where things are. Bob Corker has been terrific on this issue, my colleague from Tennessee, and working with us, trying to get to yes on these issues. There's some very important parts of the bill that aren't getting as much attention, the resolution mechanism, so we never, ever again have a too-big-to-fail situation in this country where the American taxpayer is going to be asked to bail out large institutions. That's going to be a very important part of this bill. The transparency and accountability on exotic instruments, derivatives, and the like. A systemic risk council that will look at the pre-early warning system where our economy may be at risk. And obviously the consumer issues are ones that need to be resolved. And on those issues, Peter, let me just say to you, I want independence and authority. A lot of attention is being paid to the structure. And really the critical question is what authority and how much independence will this consumer bureau division office have? And my interest is in that independence and that authority for that institution so it can do its job. So many people got so burned, consumers did over the last number of years. We need to provide whatever help we can for them. And that's where we really are in trying to iron those issues out.
Well, I know you told us even just a few days ago your new idea was perhaps to house it within the Treasury Department, this consumer division, consumer agency. Senator Corker came back with you, this idea of putting it within the Federal Reserve. What are your thoughts on that right now? Your own words a few months ago, the Fed's handling of consumer protection was an abysmal failure.
Well, I think what we're talking about here is an independent agency or office or bureau or division, depending what you call it. So where it is housed, then what's the authority, what independence? We're talking about an agency that is headed up by a presidentially appointed individual that is confirmed by the United States Senate, that has a separate funding source for their work, that has the autonomous ability to craft rules and to be directly involved in the enforcement of those rules. Now where that's located is less relevant. What existed in the past, of course, was an agency under the control of the Federal Reserve System. So while I haven't settled on the Fed as a place for this to be, there's a vast difference between what's being suggested today and what existed for so many years, and where there was so much disappointment in how that operation was run.
Is it safe for us to say that at this stage of the talks, the greatest likelihood is that the Fed would at least be the umbrella housing agency, if you will, for this?
I'm not going to bite on that, Peter. You'll excuse me, but again, there's no point in saying that and then find out we're moving a different direction. But clearly we're making an effort here to get these issues resolved.
All right. Let me ask you about, you talked about the Systemic Risk Council as well. Your thoughts at this point? Have you reached an agreement there with regard to who might be in charge of that council?
Well, not yet, but the committee's worked an awful lot on this. And again, I think nothing's finally resolved until everything is. That's a lesson I learned years ago here in the Senate. Don't start agreeing on pieces in this until you have a broad agreement. Senator Mark Warner and Bob Corker worked very hard on the resolution mechanism of this bill. I asked individual members to assume responsibility for major parts of this bill. They've done a great job on resolution authority. Systemic risk was an area they're deeply involved in as well. Jack Reed of Rhode Island and Judd Gregg of New Hampshire have been working on the derivatives area and have done a good job. They still have a couple of issues outstanding, but are working. Chuck Schumer and Mike Crapo, Chuck Schumer of New York, Mike Crapo of Idaho, have been working on governance issues there. So we've had a lot of people involved and invested in producing this bill. It is complex. We've had 82 hearings this year alone, Peter, on the subject matter. As you know, and there's so many potential unintended consequences of what we're doing. Clearly, we want to look in the rearview mirror to find we close the gaps of what happened. But also, I'm very interested in looking through the front windshield to make sure we're creating a structure and an architecture of our financial services that allows us to lead globally, allow for flexibility, creativity, imagination, which has been the hallmark of our financial services sector, a great wealth creator, job creator in this country and elsewhere. So balancing those interests is a significant challenge, and that's why this has taken as long and why we're being so careful about what we're crafting.
As you look through that front windshield, do you envision it including, if not the exact language of the Volcker rule that the administration has put forward, something that would give regulators the power to enforce those kinds of barriers?
Well, they've got to. I mean, again, look, if someone's involved in proprietary trading and they're also getting an implicit or explicit guarantee of taxpayer money if they fail, I think the answer is pretty obvious. But that's not a job for us to write, in my view.
You give that discretion to regulators.
Absolutely. That's the way to do that. I can't write regulations. This is way beyond the competency of Congress to do it. That's why we have talented, good people in these agencies to do that and then quickly report back to Congress, because the industry, the business community needs certainty on this issue. And I agree with those who raise that. We can't let this dangle out there forever. There's some very important questions about this. And I'm hopeful we'll get a quick answer back from them. In fact, I'd be asking for a time frame for them to report back. But we ought to leave it to them to make the recommendations.
As you talk with Senator Corker, he's a junior member of the Banking Committee. He stepped into the fold because you were not agreeing necessarily with Senator Shelby. Are you confident he can deliver Republicans, that he's on the same page as Senator Shelby at this point?
Well, I'm hopeful that Bob is a talented man. He's earned a lot of respect quickly around here as someone who knows what he's talking about, is thoughtful and balanced. And again, I want all members to be involved. Senator Shelby and I have a very good relationship. We've worked very closely on a lot of matters over the last 36 months of my stewardship of the Banking Committee, and I still welcome Dick Shelby's involvement here. He's a talented, good person, and this is not to exclude anybody. In fact, I've got a very talented group of members on my side of the aisle who also have strong views and ideas on how to make this bill. I've got a quarter of the United States Senate serving on the Banking Committee.